Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight to honor Miss Lyllye B. Parker and to celebrate the social and racial justice work being done by Black, Indigenous, and women of color around the world. I am Violet Johnson. I'm a member of the Hoopa Valley tribe and a descendant of the Yurok tribe in Northern California. I'm a third-year student here at the University of Oregon studying psychology, Native American studies, and art. As a queer Indigenous woman, the intersections of my identity and social structures and hierarchies built around them are inextricable. As the first Native American racial justice coordinator at the UO Women's Center, I have made it my mission to advocate for all of the Indigenous people here at this university, as well as to be an ally to Black, Indigenous, and women of color as we navigate this predominantly white institution. The Women of Color Speaker Series was named to honor the legacy and work of Miss Lyllye B. Parker in 2011 at an inaugural event featuring Dr. Angela Davis. In its 11th year under this title, the series honors the legacy that Miss Lilly created at the University of Oregon and in Eugene. Coming from one of the first African-American families to settle in Eugene, Miss Lilly was told in high school her only career options were to be a hairdresser, a nurse, or to pursue home economics. Going against the advice of that high school guidance counselor, Ms. Parker returned back to school in her 40s to earn her bachelor's degree. Ms. Parker earned a degree at the University of Oregon, and upon graduating, she accepted a position as an academic advisor at the Office of Multicultural Academic Support, now known as the Center for Multicultural Academic Excellence. In her 17 years at the Office of Multicultural Academic Support, she mentored hundreds of young students of color in pursuing their dreams. Ms. Parker continues to give back to the Lane County community through her volunteer work and loving advocacy. After tireless mobilization from the Black Student Task Force and allies in the campus community, this past year, the new Black Cultural Center was named in her honor as the Lilly Reynolds Parker Black Cultural Center, making it the first building on the University of Oregon campus named after a Black woman. She is an inspiration to us all. Please help me in honoring Miss Lyllye B. Parker.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure.
We have a few questions for you. Let's get started with our first one, which comes from Kiera Conway at the Black Cultural Center. And she asks, what did you study at the University of Oregon and why did you choose the career path that you chose?
I studied sociology. And I chose sociology because all my life, people have been asking for my advice. Even as a child, all of my friends would come and say, Lilly, what do you think? Lilly, what do you think? And then in my church, I took leadership positions and people would say, well, Lilly, what do you think? So I knew that I was good at giving advice when asked. I try not to give it when I'm not asked. But I knew that a lot of people trusted me and a lot of people shared with me. And I wanted to go with my strength. And so I chose sociology because I love people and I love people's behavior. And, you know, I'm kind of like a potter. I like to mold things. And as an academic advisor, I was able to mold many young lives.
Okay, great. Can you share with us your family's legacy as one of the first Black families to settle in Lane County?
Well, my mom arrived in Eugene, or outskirts of Eugene, in 1942. My father had came earlier and got a job with Southern Pacific Railroad. So when we finally moved into the city proper, had a hard time because, you know, Oregon had the laws that Black people couldn't settle here. But my parents persevered. I tell you, sometimes we say, why did you stay? Why couldn't we go back to Louisiana? But as an adult, I'm glad we did stay. My father established himself as a man of honor. He could be trusted. He got a job. My mom was stay at home. She worked in the church. My mom was one of the 13 charter signers of the St. Mark CME Church affiliation. My father was able to get the materials to build a church from his employer, and that church is still standing. Raising 11 children, you leave a lot of legacy. And that job couldn't have been easy, raising 11 children in a predominantly white society. But my mom and dad did a great job. They taught us how to be respectful, how to show concern, how to serve. My father said to me once, Lilly, nobody is born on this earth to just be born, live, die, and be able to breathe oxygen while they were here. You have a purpose in life. So do something so that when you die, more people than your mom and I will know that you lived. And I really took that to heart. So the greatest legacy I have for my parents is be involved. Be involved in your community and do things for other people.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have a question from Mikhail at the Women's Center, and they'd like to know a little bit more about your experience growing up in Eugene as a Black woman, specifically what brought you joy and what was difficult or disappointing.
Okay, I was educated through School District 4J. And it amazes me now as an adult that I was fulfilled. But as I look back, I missed out on a lot because I think back in the 50s, we couldn't have separate but equal in Eugene because there weren't that many Black people. So we went to school with the white students, but we didn't get the same kind of attention from our teachers as the white students. Nobody had expectations for us that like go to college. So though we were taught in a different way. But I'll tell you, my greatest moments were spending time with my friends. And I lived in a village, and it was all Black families that lived in my village. So when I wasn't in school, I was surrounded by love. I had a lot of village mothers and fathers that had no blood relation to me, but we had a heart connection. But at school, I also had white friends, and I enjoyed spending time with them. It didn't faze me that I was never invited to their homes because I never invited them to my home. So I don't think any of us knew that our parents or their parents wouldn't approve of me visiting. And though my parents knew they wouldn't approve, they also knew that their parents wouldn't approve of me inviting them to my house. So my greatest joy was just being a kid. Just being a kid, kind of been blinded to all that was going on in the world concerning being Black or Negro, and just enjoying being a kid.
That's great. I have another question from Mikhail. They are wondering, how has Eugene changed over your lifetime?
Oh my. One, there is no longer a village. With the civil rights movement, walls were broken down, even in Eugene. And we had the opportunity to move out of the village. Now, I want you to know the village was some of the best years of my life, but we had no running water. We had no inside facilities. Though we had structured housing, keep in mind, I had 10 brothers and sisters, my mom and my dad, and we were all in a 2-bedroom plus loft home. So it wasn't the best living conditions. When the Amazon flooded, our street flooded, and we had to be rescued in boats to go to higher ground. So when we were able to move off West 11, it was a great day. And we moved before anybody else because our house caught a fire and burned down. And so we moved to town, and we lived on 7th between Pearl and High. And my dad said, if you flush that toilet one more time, because it was new to us. Or he would say to me, well, Lily, do you want your mom to serve you dinner in the bathtub? Because that was new to me. On West 11th, we had a galvanized bathtub, and you heat the water and pour it in the tub, and everybody took their turn bathing on Saturday night. That's real. I mean, that was really real. But now we had opportunity to take a bath when we wanted to draw a glass of water from the kitchen sink. It was all new to us. And now that's every day. My kids didn't know what it was like to live as I did as a child. However, I don't think my kids enjoyed their childhood as much as I did, because I had my village. And in my village, I was equal to everybody. And although they had a great childhood, they still had restrictions, not as overt as I had, but they were still there. But we've come a long ways from the 50s. We got a ways to go, but things are so much better now.
Thank you for that insight. I had no idea about any of those things about what Eugene used to be like.
Let me just say that growing up in Eugene was very different for me than it was for my children. Okay, so when I was young, we didn't have much money. There was 11 of us, and my father was our sole provider. At that time, my mom was a stay-home mom. And you know, like, I couldn't go to the public swimming pool because one, didn't have any money, but two, I was brown. But I didn't know that then because I'd never tried. But we came to realize that even though it was a public pool, you had to be a part of the white community to go. We never went to the public library. I don't know if we'd have been welcomed there or not. Our parents never took the chance. Our parents were very protected. And so my children had a totally different experience. They went to Amazon pool, even though it was a new pool. It wasn't the one, I think ours was the Jefferson pool. They went to the library. They went everywhere. They could go to McDonald's. They could go downtown to the movie theater or to a restaurant, no problem. Things had really changed. They went to their friend's house. They spent the night at their friend's house. Their friends spent the night at our house. Things had opened up a great deal. And that was a good thing. That was a good thing. I always had a house full of my son and daughter's friends. And most of them were white because we lived in a predominantly white city. That was wonderful to see.
Yeah, I mean, although there are still so many issues with systemic racism in Eugene, it's really great to hear how far we've come. So it gives me hope for where we can go in the future.
And please don't get me wrong. There is still a long way for us to go, but I think now that our youth are informed, and you know, back in my day, I had dinner with a man that I went through grade school with, and he was apologizing to me because he said, I didn't know there was racism, Lilly. It was just life. The N word was used at my house like, get me a drink of water. I didn't realize what racism was until I went into the military. He said, and all of a sudden, I saw the difference when I went to military base in the South. And then I started thinking about home, and it became very apparent why my parents raised me as they did. I wasn't encouraged. I couldn't come out to your street to play baseball because they said you folks wouldn't want us out there. Well, that's how they phased it to their children. But now you see, the kids know better. The kids know you can't pull the wool over their eyes. You got TV, they see it all around the world. So they know that there is systemic racism still. There are still racist people out there. We still have to be careful. We still have to teach our children to make sure of your surroundings. At night, don't go out by yourself. You know, and my son, when he got stressed out, would go out at 2 o'clock in the morning and run. And I told him, you can't do that. You are African American, you're 6'4", you're 250 pounds. Cops see you running down the street, they are going to go to the conclusion that you've done something wrong and you're running from the law. You can't do that. It took him being thrown across the back of a police car to realize that I knew what I was talking about. And so as a Black mother, I'm charged with teaching my children how to survive in an environment that is sometimes hostile towards them.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I mean, as much progress as the city of Eugene and the state of Oregon and our country has made towards civil rights, there's still so much work that needs to be done
Yes.
to ensure the safety of, and the happiness and the well-being of
Yes.
our generations. So thank you for bringing that to light. Okay, Ms. Parker, I'd love to know a little bit more about your experience both as a student and as an advisor at the University of Oregon.
Okay. As a student, I was 40 years old, so I was considered non-traditional. The university was not prepared for non-traditional students. So there was no programs set up for us. And none of us were going to join a sorority or go to a fraternity party. Most of us, and in my social set, there were 7 of us, and I was the only African American. We were all parents. And so, we didn't go to the beer garden. We didn't do that kind of stuff. We're adults, we got responsibilities. And so our focus was on academics and supporting each other. So those other 6 non-traditional students and I formed our own study group. And we helped each other. And we weren't all in the same major, but we had some interesting conversations, intellectual conversations that caused you to really think before you answer. So we learned how to, once again, think critical. Because now remember, we've been parents for, I think my daughter was 18. my son was 13. I didn't really have to think critical with my children. I just had to think on their level to try and get them to do what I wanted them to do. So I learned how to think critically, and that carried me through the classes that I took. I was really amazed at how much misinformation I was given about people of color in my classes. And you know, if you have the power to write the history and you only write the history around yourself, nobody else matters. And so I really got the impression that I didn't matter. But because I was in my 40s, I wasn't afraid to speak up and say, I'm sorry, I have an issue with that. I had a history of women's classes, and it was in two parts. I loved my professor because I would say, excuse me, I don't think that's right. I said, why did you say, okay, we're studying women's history and somebody asked you a question about Black women, and you said, okay, now let's go back and study women's history. It's like you made me invisible. And when I came back for her second term class, at the end of the term, she said, Lilly, I really appreciate you because you taught me how to teach. Now, wasn't that something? I love that woman to this day because she listened to me and made me feel like my word was valuable. There weren't too many classes that actually did that. It was like you were invisible in the class until your professor needed you to teach the class about you. That was frustrating. But you know, after a while, they quit calling on me because I just go up to the podium and take over the class. If you want me to teach, I'll just teach. Or I would say, you know, you get paid for doing that. I don't get paid. It was challenging, but it was a good challenge because I learned, you know, growing up in Eugene with nothing to compare it to, I was really naive about life as a Black woman in the world, not just in Eugene, but in the world. During the civil rights movement, fortunately, we had a little black and white TV, so I saw those dogs attacking and the cattle prods and the baseball bats. And I knew the water hoses. And I knew that in some parts of this country that I'm born into, I'm not treated like everybody else. But we didn't have that in Eugene, Oregon. But if I look beyond the violence that was apparent on the TV, I saw the covert racism that I was living with in Eugene, Oregon. And so it really expanded my horizons so that I would go out and be more intent on my history and where I stood as an American citizen in a country that most times didn't recognize me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that certainly makes a lot of sense. And I think that a lot of students of color can, both traditional and non-traditional, can relate to your experiences of marginalization in the classroom as well as tokenization, you know, having to be asked to be the representative for your entire, you know, group that you represent. I mean, I've experienced that in my own experiences in the classroom, and I know that how frustrating that can be. And yeah, it's upsetting that those things are still going on to this day. But I think that it's really nice to hear that you, as someone who has experienced those things, has been able to overcome that and to make such a positive change. That's really inspirational to me. So thank you for sharing that.
And that was one reason why I gave up a full-time job to come back to the university to a part-time job as an academic advisor in the Office of Multicultural Affairs, 1995. Because I knew that our students needed support, because I needed support. And as an older person, I knew how to get that support. And I'm born and raised in Eugene, Oregon, so having white mentors wasn't a big thing for me. Not seeing many people that looked like me in the classroom on campus, I'd been through that all my life. I did not have a Black instructor till I was a freshman in college. But I knew that African-American students coming from areas of my country where we were more visible would have a hard time adjusting to living at the University of Oregon, where you might go a whole week without seeing another African-American unless you know somebody, or you'd be in a classroom and you'd be the only Black person in there. And so everything that came up about Black people, the professor pointed the finger at you. So I knew I wanted to support these students. And I know that getting my degree in sociology opened that door for me. Honestly, I'll be honest with you. I always thought that I knew how to be a good academic advisor before I got that degree. But I needed that degree to open the door to give me the opportunity to do the job. And so when I became an academic advisor, I went back to being an 8th grade student when my counselor told me, "Oh no, Lily, you'll never be an attorney. Not only are you a Negro, but you're a girl." So cosmetology, home economics, nursing, those are fields that you can go into. And I promised myself, if I ever have the opportunity, I will forever tell young Black girls, you can be anybody you want to be. And the only person who can stop you from being that person is you. And so when I took my job and I jumped all the hoops that I had to the first 18 months I was there as a part-time advisor, I began to build relationship with students, and not only Black students, Latinos, Native Americans, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, Mideasterners, and I even had white students calling me saying, "Mrs. Parker, can you be my advisor?" Because you have to take the whole student, from the crown of their head to the sole of their feet. You have to take all that into consideration when you're advising a young man or a young woman. And I would say to them, everybody come to campus with baggage. Some of us can carry our baggage in a little matchbox, but there's some of us who has railroad cars full of baggage that we're carrying around with us. While you're here, empty that car out. Make sure that you come in here, you know who you are, and you know whose you are, and who you're going to be when you leave here. Because it's not necessary for you to come here being a little Black girl or a little Black boy or a little Native boy or Asian boy or Pacific Islander girl and leave here trying to be a little Black girl wrapped up in a white body. See, you don't have to take on white ideology to be educated. And I think that a lot of times our students are fed that. Oh no, you can't be like that anymore. This is how you do in academia. This is how we talk in academia. Oh no, you can't write like that. That's how we write in academia. I can be brilliant and not sound like a white person. And I can take my conversation to the president's office and hold a good conversation with them, as I can engage the campus plumber that I might run across and hold a wonderful conversation with him, as I can if I run across one of the homeless people that live on campus and hold a conversation with them to allow them to know that I see you. See, that's important. And so that was my objective, being academic advisor, to see the student, to hear the student, and to say to that student, yes, you can, and don't you let anybody tell you you can't. And so when I'd have a student run in my office crying because the department head said that they would never earn a degree from that department, I told them, you got 5 minutes on this pity party, and then I want you to tell me, what did I tell you? And then when they finally stopped crying, they said, well, Mrs. Parker, you said I could do it. Then you don't listen to that department head, because if you finish the classes, they got to give you a degree. And that's bottom line. I had that happen 4 times. 4 times my students got their degree. But had there been nobody there to advocate for them, they'd have went away feeling unworthy and like they didn't have the qualifications to be in that major. That to me was an atrocity. We're already coming in as the underdog. Don't heap dirt on our head that we can't climb out of. So that was my job. As they heaped the dirt on, I had a shovel shoveling it off and building those students back up and watching them graduate. And that was the greatest payday I would ever have. And I'm sorry, I get really emotional when I talk about my students, because any institution can make or break a student. I'm not going to pay you $25,000 to $50,000 a year to break me and then send me home deep in debt with nothing to show for it. And I have to give the university its kudos, because they allowed me to be on the committee that met at the end of each term to say who was going home and who wasn't. And I was allowed to advocate for students of color and get them a second, sometimes a third, and sometimes a fourth chance. But in the end, they graduated. That's what's important.
It sounds like a lot of your students were dealing with some issues with imposter syndrome that were definitely being amplified by, faculty who didn't believe in them. And I think that your voice and your role at the university was absolutely vital for students of color. So, and even just hearing your story now, it's definitely very impactful for me as I continue my own academic journey. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
And let me just say, I wasn't in that office by myself. I had such a wonderful team of advisors in my office. And 99% of the time we supported each other 100%. And I couldn't have done it without them. And I wish to think that they couldn't do it without me. So I have to give kudos to people, and we were all people of color that were advisors, who had been there, who may or may not have experienced what our students were experiencing, but we learned from each other. That which I didn't know about the Native culture, Brenda Tuomi taught me, so that I would be culturally sensitive. And that which Linda Liu didn't know about Black culture, I shared with her as an Asian American so that she could be culturally conscious. We supported each other. And that was one reason why I survived so long, because I had people in my office supporting me.
That solidarity is just absolutely vital. And I think the support of other students of color that I've had in my time at the University of Oregon has been crucial in how far I've made it. So I totally agree with you on that. And the support from the CMAE, like my academic advisor that I meet with at the CMAE every term, she's helped me get to where I am and to exceed things within and outside the classroom. And so I know how important that role is as an advisor for your students' success.
Yes, you actually become more than an advisor. And I think the university had a hard time identifying us because we were a counselor, we were parents, we were teachers, we were grandparents, we were community mentors. Sometimes we were psychologists and psychiatrists. Anything, any position a student needed us to take, we took. Had a student who, Alaskan Indian, and she was sick. And she lived in an apartment by herself, and she was really sick with the flu. I went and got her and took her to my house. She couldn't be home by herself that sick. She couldn't take care of herself. But that's what we did. I wasn't the only one who did that. We took care of our students. I had opportunity for 13 years to go to Honolulu, to Hawaii, for orientation. And I said to those parents over there, we're going to take care of your kids. And I intended to make that a truth so that when their student came here, I wanted them to know, I'm going to be here if you need me. Don't be shy about coming in and accessing me. And I'll tell you, this is 2021. I retired in 2012. I'm still getting phone calls and emails and texts. I got a text the other day from a young Native American woman who came in 2010, and she said, I came to the retreat, she said, and I was crying. And you came over and you gave me the best hug I've ever had. And I'll never forget that. And I just want to say thank you to you. Here we are 11 years later. See, it's the little things. It's the little, and you don't expect to get glory from doing what you do every day. I'm just blessed to have had that opportunity. And my students don't know, they taught me as much or more than I taught them. Yeah. It's probably the best 17 years of my life, besides being a daughter and a parent, working with those students and seeing their success, particularly those who had a hard time making it through. And to see the joy in their face when they got that degree, because they didn't think they could do it.
Yeah, I can imagine how that must feel.
Yeah.
As a student and as a mentor and an advisor, how that work really pays off, and just how meaningful getting that degree really is, especially for students of color who may be first generation students or might not have had access to education before in the way that their white peers might have. And yeah, that's just a really brilliant moment. I have another question from Mikhail, and they ask, what advice would you give to someone wanting to pursue a similar career to you?
Well, first, recognize your strengths. I've seen so many students who chose a career because they thought it was going to make them a lot of money, and they spend all that money to get a degree and have to go back and get another one because they realized it wasn't really money they were looking for. Don't go into this career thinking you're going to get rich. Go into this career thinking that the wealth that you are going to make will be in people, not dollars. It's not going to put any food on your table, but it certainly will put joy in your heart. So know what you want to do and then prepare yourself. I love psychology, but and that's what I signed up for to begin with. But then that's not who I wanted to be. I wanted sociology. I wanted to deal with human behavior. I wanted to be able to impact that behavior. And in some instances, change that behavior, but in a way that the person I was trying to remold didn't think I was trying to change them. And they just accepted it as, this is my growth. I'm evolving here into who I'm going to be when I leave this place. That's important. Meet the students where they are. And remember, everybody's experience isn't the same. Be a good listener. I give hugs. I was a hugger. I couldn't help it. If I was advising now, I'd probably have so many complaints because I'm a toucher. I am a toucher. I like to connect with people. So if you're going to go into higher education, know who you are. Know your self-worth. Make a plan. Make yourself a budget, not just a financial budget, but a time budget, an energy budget, and then jump in with 2 feet. And don't let anybody tell you what you can't do. And now, can I just have a moment to say something to the students that really weighs heavy on my heart?
Absolutely.
We have just come through some tumultuous times in our country. And January 6th, we saw the culmination of what negative speak and actions can produce even in our country. January 6th was a big teaching stage for Americans who cannot wrap their brain around, maybe I'm not supposed to be saying this because, yes, I am, can't wrap their head around privilege and white privilege. Because as you look at that melee at the White House, and you looked at law enforcement, the military, the FBI, the CIA, one woman got shot and she was killed. God bless her and rest her soul. But had that been a Black Lives Movement rally, they would still be sweeping up body parts and blood off the steps of the White House. And I hope as Americans, we saw that. And we saw the difference of how that crowd was treated compared to the crowd who had been there with Black Lives Matter, and how that crowd was treated compared to those crowds in Portland, Oregon, or Seattle, Washington. I hope as Americans, we saw that and that we grew from it. But even more so, I hope that young people saw role models and mentors like Stacey Abrams, who said, I'm going to do something, and took it up on herself to enroll people on the voting rosters, because the only way we're going to change things is to be the change that we want to see happen. And look what happened. I want to say to young women and men and students of color, we changed the political profile of America in 2021. It was our vote that changed this profile. I want to encourage you. Get involved. I came through the civil rights movement in the 60s. We were nonviolent. And I don't think Black Lives Movement is a violent movement, but I do believe that they're infiltrated by people who want to make them look violent. But it makes my heart sing to see young folks say, okay, we're tired of waiting. We want to see something happen today. We did it at the voters box in November. We did it. We changed the complexion of Washington, D.C. Prepare yourself to run for office. You can be anybody you want to be. You can be Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. You can be. Don't play yourself short. We need to change things from the inside out. So we need to be at the table. Now, the door has been opened. Don't let them close it. Young people, be proud of who you are. Because you know what? Soon and very soon, Black history, Asian history, Native history, Asian history, Pacific Islander history is going to be in our history books. And it's going to be woven through the fabrics of American history. It's coming. They don't get to hide us anymore because we're standing up and showing America that you look down on us all these years, but if you took away everything that was accomplished by even Black folks, and I say Black folks because that's my people, in this country, you'd have to go back to grinding things by pounding them with rocks, because much of the innovation in America came from the Black community. So be proud of who you are. Stand up, stand tall. Yes, you can. Yes, we can. And always remember, you can be educated. Do it and do it well. Make sure that when you spend money to go to college, you get your money's worth. If you are an A student, make sure you get A's. If you're just a C student, we will celebrate your C's if that's the best you can do. But if you're an A student doing C work, you need to get yourself together, because we don't have time for you to throw away all that money and waste all that time when we need you to graduate and get on board, and let's change America. Let's establish a seat at the table for us, for our future, for my grandkids' future. Do better. Young folks, do better. Hold America accountable. Don't tear up America. I'm not telling you to do that. We hold them accountable at the table. And when we walk in, use your voice, because it's worth something. It is truly worth something. I just had to say that. I want our young folks to know times have changed. We don't sit in the back of the bus anymore. As a matter of fact, sometimes we drive the bus. So let us claim what belongs to us. America, if anybody has the right to be angry and ugly, it's us as descendants of slaves in this country. But that's not who we are. That is not who we are. And you know what? By making the playing field equal, white America, don't worry, we're not going to take away what is yours. You don't have to give up what is yours for us to have ours. Don't be afraid of that. They will tell you, oh, them Black folks, them Mexicans gonna take your job. You better be careful. We don't want your job. We want our jobs. We just want our jobs to be as valuable and have as much prestige as your job if we're qualified to do the job. That's me. That's my thoughts on that.
I completely agree, and thank you so much for those uplifting words.
But I want our students to know we are somebody. You're somebody. Always remember that, and don't let anybody tell you you're not.
Yeah. Well, Ms. Parker, thank you so much for offering your time and energy to be here. And on behalf of the UO Women's Center, the Black Cultural Center, and the entire University of Oregon community, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your words and actions are so inspiring as a Native student and as a woman. You're uplifting and empowering me to use my voice to advocate for my community and to advocate for myself. So I'm so grateful to have been able to have this conversation with you today. Thank you so much for all of the positive change that you've brought to the University of Oregon and to the world.
Thank you so much. And I want to say thank you to all of you for visiting me on my Starship Enterprise. We're going to blast out now because we got some work to do in outer space. And as we leave your atmosphere, I just want to remind you before going, claim it. Claim who you are, own it, and go and get it. Good luck to all of you, and may God bless us all.